Breaking news. Lions family, I started this Monday really deep in thought after what happened yesterday. I have to admit, I'm still angry. We lost to the Packers, and there's no way to hide the frustration. It was a game that left marks, moments of hope that turned into disappointment. And now, we're stuck with that bitter taste. But one thing's for sure, the season is still alive, and every loss brings lessons we need to face head-on. This is exactly the kind of moment when we need to stick together as fans, with energy and with our voices. So I'm asking you to drop a like because it really helps us here, and of course, I want to see everyone in the comments. Tell me, what was your reaction after that loss to the Packers? What do you think about the team's attitude? I want to hear the voice of Lions Nation. The Detroit Lions just put on a performance that left fans stunned, frustrated, and frankly, embarrassed. A 27-13 loss to the Green Bay Packers in a game that exposed every single weakness of this team. This wasn't just a bad game. It was one of the worst offensive showings many of us have witnessed in years, and the conversation after this one is unavoidable. Everyone wants to know what happened, why this offense looked so lifeless, and whether changes need to be made immediately before the season spirals out of control. Let's start with the defense, because believe it or not, it might have been the least painful unit to watch. They came out flat, gave Jordan Love all the time in the world in the pocket, and offered no pressure whatsoever. Love could have pulled out a lawn chair back there and read a book. Zero pass rush, none. Hutchinson, Davenport, non-existent. It was Ockner who managed to grab the lone sack, but beyond that, this defensive line gave the Packers quarterback free rein to dissect the field. If you don't get to the quarterback, you don't win in the NFL. And the Lions proved that in the worst way possible. Add to that the injury to Terrion Arnold, who not only struggled before going out with a groin issue, but also gave up a costly touchdown. This defense was supposed to take a step forward, but right now it looks like it has regressed. Bland, soft, uninspired. Special teams, penalties galore. Sure, we converted a couple of field goals, but we constantly handed the Packers short.
Fields with mental mistakes. In a game where every yard mattered, that phase of football let the team down as well. Now to the offense, and here's where things really get ugly. The lone bright spot was Isaac Tesla's phenomenal one-handed touchdown grab, a play that gave us a brief moment of hope. But one flash doesn't erase 4 quarters of misery. The offensive line got manhandled, especially in the second half. Mahogany, Graham Glasgow, and Radledge all struggled to keep the pocket intact, leaving Jared Goff running scared. And make no mistake about it, he looked scared. Goff's stat line of 31 completions on 39 attempts for 1 touchdown and 1 interception looks fine on paper, but the reality was brutal. He looked hesitant, jumpy, like he was seeing ghosts in the pocket. And then there's John Morton. Let's not sugarcoat this. His play calling was atrocious. Dink and dunk 5-yard passes all afternoon. No creativity, no deep shots despite having the talent to stretch the field. Where were the play-action bombs to Jameson Williams? Where were the seam routes for Sam Laporta? Where was Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the most reliable weapons in the NFL? And why was Isaac Tesla left waiting until late in the game to get meaningful touches? Morton's offense was so vanilla it made last year's New York Jets look dynamic. Fans were already calling for him to be on the hot seat after this one, and if things don't change immediately, he could be gone by week 5. That's how bad it looked. This isn't the Lions offense we came to know last year. Back then, we were explosive, unpredictable, fun to watch. Now, this group looks like it's sleepwalking. It felt like 2008 all over again. Jared Goff and John Morton need to have some very serious conversations this week, because what happened on that field is unacceptable. Even Dan Campbell's leadership is being questioned. If Morton can't adjust, maybe Campbell needs to take over the play calling himself, because wasting this kind of offensive talent is inexcusable. St. Brown, Williams, Tesla, Laporta, these are difference makers, but they can't shine if the play design and execution look like they came out of a preseason playbook. The bottom line is this: the Packers absolutely destroyed us, and their fans earned the right to gloat after that performance. The Lions, on the other hand, walked off the field looking defeated, unprepared, and uninspired. This is supposed to be a season of high expectations, but if this is the version of the Lions we're going to see, then buckle up, it's going to be a long year. And here's the kicker: Chicago is up next. The Bears might not be world beaters, but if Detroit trots out the same lifeless effort, starting the season 0-2 becomes a very real possibility. That's not how you chase a playoff run. That's how you bury one before it even begins. So now I turn it over to you. Lions fans, I want to hear from you in the comments. Give me your one-word reaction to this game. Is it disgraceful? Embarrassing? Shocking? Maybe you've got your own. Let me know what you're feeling because right now this team needs accountability, and the fans deserve answers. Do you think John Morton should be on the hot seat already? Do you trust Jared Goff to rebound after such a shaky showing? And most importantly, do you still believe this team can turn it around before it's too late? Because here's the truth. If the Detroit Lions don't turn this around immediately, we're staring at a season that could unravel before it even gets rolling. Think about it. Last year, this team only lost 2 games the entire regular season. Now, after just 1 week, they already look like a shell of that group. And it's not just the loss to Green Bay that hurts. It's how it happened. It wasn't a hard-fought battle where a few bounces went the wrong way. This was a flat-out beatdown where the Lions looked unprepared, uninspired, and unwilling to adjust. Let's dig deeper into the offense because this is the unit that was supposed to carry the Lions into contention this season. We've been told time and again that this group was built to be explosive. Amon-Ra St. Brown as the reliable chain mover. Jameson Williams as the deep threat who could stretch defenses vertically. Sam Laporta as a tight end mismatch. And now Isaac Tesla, who showed with that one-handed grab that he has the hands and body control to make highlight plays. On paper, that's a dangerous group, but on the field against the Packers, invisible, completely underutilized. And that all comes back to coaching. John Morton's playbook looked like it was written in pencil on a napkin. There was no rhythm, no deception, no willingness to adapt once it was clear the Packers had sniffed out the short passing game. Every drive felt predictable, as if the Lions were afraid to test Green Bay down the field. That's not what wins in today's NFL. That's how you lose by double digits while your opponent never breaks a sweat. And if Morton doesn't start calling plays that maximize the talent on this roster, this entire season is going to feel like a waste. But coaching wasn't the only issue. The offensive line, usually a point of pride for Detroit, got bullied in the trenches. Jared Goff never looked comfortable, and for good reason. The pressure came early and often, and when quarterbacks start to feel that heat, they get jittery. That's exactly what we saw. Goff wasn't stepping into his throws. He wasn't attacking with confidence. He was checking down, forcing balls into tight coverage, and ultimately handing the Packers momentum. When your leader under center looks that rattled, the entire offense crumbles. The running game? Non-existent. You can't keep defenses honest if you can't establish the run, and the Lions flat out failed to do that. It made the offense even easier to defend. Combine that with penalties on special teams and a defense that couldn't generate pressure, and you've got the recipe for exactly what we saw, a game that felt over by the third quarter. Defensively, the lack of pass rush is alarming. For a team that invested in guys like Hutchinson and Davenport, you'd expect quarterbacks to at least feel some heat. Instead, Jordan Love was left untouched for most of the game. He looked calm, collected, and surgical because the Lions gave him no reason to feel otherwise. And then, when Terry and Arnold went down, the secondary was left even more exposed. The injuries are piling up, the pressure is non-existent, and the linebackers were practically invisible. If this unit doesn't toughen up, every quarterback they face is going to have a career day. Now, let's step back and look at the big picture. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell built this roster with the expectation that it was ready to compete for more than just a playoff spot. The message to fans was clear. The rebuild was over, and the Lions were contenders. But what we saw against the Packers doesn't look like a contender. It looked like a team still searching for its identity, still trying to figure out how to use its talent, and still vulnerable to the same old problems that have haunted this franchise for decades. The silver lining? It's only week 1. There's time to fix this, but the urgency has to be there. Dan Campbell can't allow another performance like this. If Morton can't deliver a modern, dynamic offense, then Campbell has to step in and take the reins himself. If the pass rush can't wake up, then personnel changes or schematic adjustments have to be made. The Bears are up next, and while they might not be the powerhouse Green Bay is, they're still a divisional rival who would love nothing more than to push Detroit to 0-2. This isn't about overreacting to one bad game. It's about recognizing how bad it truly was. This was embarrassing. The Lions had talent on the field, and they squandered it. And unless they prove otherwise in Chicago, people are going to start questioning everything. Goff's leadership, Morton's competence, even Campbell's decision-making. So Lions fans, here's where I leave it to you again. Do you think this team can bounce back quickly? Or are you worried this is the start of a long, painful season? Was this just a one-off disaster? Or does it expose deeper problems in the coaching staff and roster construction? Drop your thoughts below. Give me your one-word reaction to this loss. And let's talk about what has to change before the Lions hit the field again. Because one thing is for sure, if Detroit shows up in Chicago looking anything like they did against Green Bay, this season could slip away before it even starts. And let's be honest, fans are already restless because we've seen this story before. High expectations, national buzz, talk of finally breaking through, and then a flat performance that makes it feel like nothing has changed. That's the danger right now. If the Lions don't respond immediately, this team risks losing the belief of its fan base, and in Detroit, belief has always been fragile. The most painful part of this loss is that it wasn't about being outmatched talent-wise. The Lions have the roster to compete. They weren't physically dominated by a far superior team. They were undone by their own mistakes, their own lack of execution, and a game plan that looked 10 years outdated. That's the type of loss that stings the most, because it's self-inflicted. And if it's self-inflicted, it means it's fixable, but only if accountability is taken seriously. Dan Campbell has built his reputation on toughness, on resilience, on refusing to let his team back down. Now he has to prove it. This locker room needs a wake-up call, and it has to come from him. Not in week 5, not in the middle of the season, now. The players need to feel that what happened in Green Bay is unacceptable and that every single man in that room has to take responsibility. That means Goff holding himself accountable for his shaky play. That means Morton owning up to his lifeless play calling. That means Hutchinson and the entire defensive front looking in the mirror and deciding that zero pressure is simply not an option. Next week against the Bears isn't just another game.